Guns were new to these African people, and they were afraid of the loud noise and the smoke, but they were happy about the dead wildcat. I gave them the meat of the dead animal, and they gave us more food and water. We now had a lot of food and water, and we sailed on. 11 days later, we came to the Cape Verde Islands. We could see them, but we couldn't get near them because there was no wind. We waited. Suddenly, Zuri called to me, "Look, a ship!" He was right. We called and shouted and sailed our little boat as fast as we could, but the ship did not see us. Then I remembered the guns, which made a lot of smoke. A few minutes later, the ship saw us and turned. When we were on the ship, the Portuguese captain listened to my story. He was going to Brazil and agreed to help me, but he wanted nothing for his help. "No," he said, when I tried to play him. "Perhaps one day someone will help me when I need it." But he gave me a lot of money for my boat and for Zuri too. At first I did not want to sell Zuri as a slave after all our dangerous activities together, but Zuri was happy to go to the captain, and the captain was a good man. In 10 years' time, he said, Zuri can go free. When we arrived in Brazil 3 weeks later, I said goodbye to the captain, and Zuri left the ship and went to begin a new life. I stayed in Brazil and worked hard for some years. By then I was rich, but also bored. One day some friends came to me and said, "We're going to Africa to do some business. Why don't you come with us? We'll all be rich after this journey." How stupid I was. I had an easy, comfortable life in Brazil. But of course I agreed. And so, in 1659, I went to sea again. At first, all went well, but then there was a terrible storm. For 12 days the wind and the rain didn't stop. We lost 3 men in the sea, and soon the ship had holes in its sides. "We're all going to die this time," I said to myself. Then one morning one of the sailors saw land, but the next minute our ship hit some sand just under the sea. The ship could not move, and we really were in danger now. The sea was trying to break the ship into pieces, and we had very little time. Quickly we put a boat into the sea and got off the ship. But the sea was very rough, and our little boat could not survive long in that wild water. Half an hour later, the angry sea turned our boat over, and we were all in the water. I looked round for my friends, but I could see nobody. I was alone. That day I was lucky, and the sea carried me to the shore. I could not see the land, only mountains and mountains of water all around me. Then suddenly I felt the ground under my feet. Another mountain of water came, pushed me up the beach, and I fell on the wet sand. At first I was very thankful to be alive. Slowly I got to my feet and went higher up the shore. From there I looked out to sea. I could see our ship, but it was wrecked, and there was nobody near it. There was nobody in the water. All my friends were dead. I was alive, but in a strange, wild country, with no food, no water, and no gun. It was dark now, and I was tired. I was afraid to sleep on the shore. Perhaps there were wild animals there. So I went up into a tree and stayed there all night. Chapter 4, A New Life on the Island. When day came, the sea was quiet again. I looked for our ship, and, to my surprise, it was still there, and still in one piece. I think I can swim to it, I said to myself. So I walked down to the sea, and before long I was at the ship and was swimming around it. but could I get onto it? In the end, I got through a hole in the side, but it wasn't easy. There was a lot of water in the ship, but the sand under the sea was still holding the ship in one place. The back of the ship was high out of the water, and I was very thankful for this, because all the ship's food was there. I was very hungry, so I began to eat something at once. Then I decided to take some of it back to the shore with me, but how could I get it there? I looked around the ship, and after a few minutes I found some long pieces of wood. I tied them together with a rope, then I got the things that I wanted from the ship. There was a big box of food, rice and salted meat and hard ship's bread. I also took many strong knives and other tools, the ship's sails and ropes, paper, pens, books, and 7 guns. Now I needed a little sail from the ship. Then I was ready. Slowly and carefully I went back to the shore. It was difficult to stop my things from falling into the sea, but in the end I got everything onto the shore. Now I needed somewhere to keep my things. There were some hills around me, so I decided to build myself a little house on one of them. I walked to the top of the highest hill and looked down. I was very unhappy because I saw that I was on an island. There were 2 smaller islands a few miles away, and after that, only the sea, just the sea, for mile after mile after mile. After a time, I found a little cave in the side of a hill. In front of it, there was a good place to make a home. So I used the ship's sails, rope, and pieces of wood, and after a lot of hard work, I had made a very fine tent. The cave at the back of my tent was a good place to keep my food, so I called it my kitchen. That night, I went to sleep in my new home. The next day I thought about the possible dangers on the island. Were there wild animals and perhaps wild people too on my island? I didn't know, but I was very afraid, so I decided to build a very strong fence. I cut down young trees and put them in the ground in a half circle around the front of my tent. I used many of the ship's ropes too, and in the end, my fence was as strong as a stone wall. Nobody could get over it, through it, or round it. Making tents and building fences is hard work. I needed many tools to help me. So I decided to go back to the ship again to get some more things. I went back in all 12 times. But soon after my 12th visit, there was another terrible storm. And the next morning, when I looked out to sea, there was no ship. When I saw that, I was very unhappy. Why am I alive, and why are all my friends dead? I asked myself. What will happen to me now, alone on this island without friends? How can I ever escape from it? Then I told myself that I was lucky to be alive, lucky to have food and tools, lucky to be young and strong. But I knew that my island was somewhere off the coast of South America, and that ships did not often come down this coast. And I said to myself, you know, I'm going to be on this island for a very long time. So, on a long piece of wood, I cut these words: I came here on the 30th of September, 1659. And after that, I decided to make a cut for every day. Learning to live alone I needed to learn a lot of things. Well, I said I'm going to have to make the many things I need, so every day I worked. First of all, I wanted to make my cave bigger. I carried out stones from the cave, and after many days' hard work, I had a large cave in the side of a hill. Then I needed a table and a chair, and that was my next job. I had to work on them a very long while. I also wanted to make places to put all my food, all my tools, and my guns. But every time I wanted a piece of wood, I had to cut down a tree. It was long, slow, and difficult work. And during the next few months, I learnt to be very clever with my tools. There was naturally no hurry. I had all the time in the world. I also went out every day, and always I had my gun with me. Sometimes I killed a wild animal, and then I had meat to eat. But when it got dark, I had to go to bed because I had no light. I couldn't read or write because I couldn't see. For a long time I didn't know what to do, but in the end I learnt to use the fat of dead animals to make a light. The weather on my island was usually hot, and there were often storms and heavy rain. The next June it rained all the time, and I couldn't go out very often. I was also ill for some weeks, but slowly I got better. When I was stronger, I began to go out again. The first time I killed a wild animal, and the second time I caught a big turtle. I was on the island for 10 months before I visited other parts of it. During those months, I worked hard on my cave and my house and my fence. Now I was ready to find out more about the rest of the island. First, I walked along the side of a little river. There I found open ground without trees.